Hey, special educators. Welcome to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire, the podcast dedicated to making your job as a special education teacher easier by making your instruction more fun for you and your students. Inside each episode, you'll learn how to get the most use out of your task boxes in the classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Hollady from Chalkboard Superhero, a veteran special education teacher passionate about empowering you with purposeful teaching strategies, helpful tips and tricks, and other classroom management tools that will help you thrive in your role. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey there, special education teachers, and welcome back to another episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I'm your host, Lisa Hollady, and today we're breaking down what you need to teach, model, and practice during the first 10 days of school with a twist. I know many of you are teaching in different settings, some in inclusion classrooms, other in self-contained. So in this episode, I'm going to walk through what the first 10 days of school should look like in both settings. Because while the goals are the same, the approach is a little different. So whether you're co-teaching in a gen ed classroom or managing every piece of the day in your own room, I got you covered. So why do the first 10 days even matter? The first 10 days aren't about the curriculum. They're about training your students how to function in the classroom. We're laying the foundation for routines, expectations, transitions, independence. Because the truth is, when you teach your routines first, the rest of the year runs so much smoother. And actually, when I was in the self-contained setting, I did a lot of centers in my classroom, and I would usually teach an ELA center. And I would never teach my center those first 2 weeks, because what I did was I would go around and kind of float and see what everyone else was doing to get everyone else where I needed them to be, and then I would start teaching. And I learned that from one of the best mentors that I ever had. All right, let's just jump right into it. Day 1 through 3, let's talk about the environment. So for both settings, your priority is helping students feel safe and confident navigating their space. So in the self-contained setting, you're teaching everything. So start slow and simple. Show students how to enter and exit, where to put their backpacks, how to follow their schedules, their visual schedules. I want you to walk through each area of the classroom, the calming corner, the workstation, the morning meeting area. Use hands-on modeling and visuals consistently. On the opposite end, in an inclusion setting, your students are learning your expectations plus the gen ed expectations. So you're going to want to focus on helping students understand the structure of those two environments. So when you're working with your gen ed co-teacher to kind of model those transitions between the two settings, so lining up, specials, you're also going to want to prep your students with visual reminders or having mini schedules so that they can carry between the classrooms. But honestly, with both, you're going to want to model everything: where to sit, what to do when finished, how to ask for help. So many students have no idea how to do that. Days 4 through 6, you're going to want to teach reinforcement and work routines. This is when you start teaching how to complete work and what reinforcement systems are going to be in place. So let's jump to the self-contained setting. You're going to want to first introduce your token economy systems. So what does that look like? Does everyone have their own token economy? Do you have a classroom token economy? Do you have some sort of reward system? Do students have points charts? What kind of break options do they have? You're going to also want to practice errorless tasks so students can build confidence. You're also going to want to use this time to assess how much support or prompting each student's need, and you're also going to want to assess how well you have trained your staff. Because sometimes when you walk around the room, you notice who needs training and who does not. In an inclusion setting, on the other hand, you're going to want to collaborate with your co-teacher to kind of reinforce expectations consistently. And something I felt I have been doing a lot of in my own inclusion setting this year is teaching a lot more of those social emotional regulation skills or how to interact with peers, those types of things. Also, you want to teach how and when to use any self-regulation tools or reinforcements that they carry, either a first then board or a break card or the fidgets that they're using. I end up doing in my inclusion setting this year in the beginning of the school year. And I did this for the whole class, not just for my caseload. I did it for all 23 students I had. So I sat in the front of the room and we talked a lot about what a fidget is, that it's a tool, not a toy. And I had a whole presentation on how to use these types of things so that they know how to use them in the gen ed setting. You also want to focus on supporting stamina and independence during whole group instruction or even independent work. This is also when you'll see who's overwhelmed, who needs movement, and who needs more structure. So those last 3 to 4 days, days 7 through 10, you're going to want to layer in academics and social routines. Now that your routines are in place, you can begin academic routines and also peer interaction expectations. So this is going to kind of look a lot different in self-contained than it does in inclusion. So let's start with self-contained. You're going to want to introduce centers, short whole group lessons, and even morning work routines. You're going to continue using visuals for everything. Where to go, how long the task will take, what happens next. You're going to want to have visuals on your person at all times. You're going to want to practice turn taking, raising hands, sharing, and using sentence stems for even communication. In an inclusion setting, this is going to look a lot different. So you're going to want to work with your co-teacher to embed your student in academic routines, like morning meeting or centers or even small group. You're also going to want to pre-teach expectations before transitions. So when you say things like, when we go to math, here's what you're going to see, and here's what you're going to need to do. Giving them that primer before they even enter the classroom. And then you're going to want to model how to ask for help. And now that I've been in inclusion for a full year, this is a struggle. Kids have no idea how to ask for help or how to participate without disrupting or really how to manage their sensory needs without drawing huge attention to themselves. Modeling all of those things is going to be super helpful for you this year. And this is when you start working on blending in the supports rather than front-loading them all at once. The top 5 things to teach, practice, and model in any setting, whether you're in inclusion or self-contained, these are non-negotiables. Number 1, following a visual schedule. So in inclusion, you're using kind of like a portable or discrete version, but in self-contained, you might post it big and refer to it constantly. Or maybe they're in middle school or junior high, or even at the high school, they have little schedules because they're going all over the building. Number 2, transitioning calmly. In inclusion, you want to teach them how to kind of leave and rejoin the class. In self-contained, your practice going from one task to another task inside the classroom, right? Number 3, using reinforcement or asking for help. So in an inclusion setting, you have little break cards. Maybe you have a signal, like a little hand signal. Maybe they're using a little cue. But in self-contained, you're using a lot more structured token boards and a lot of visuals. Number 4, completing independent work. In inclusion, you're going to need to modify or adapt assignments. So taking away questions, highlighting things, building their stamina. They can work for a little bit longer. In self-contained, it looks a little bit different, but you're going to want to use airless learning or visual supported tasks. And number 5 is knowing what to do when finished. So a lot of kids get done super quick and they're like, okay, what do I do now? And a lot of kids that are on our caseload will often get themselves in trouble, especially in inclusion settings. So In inclusion, you're going to want to teach discrete options like choosing a quiet activity, playing with their fidgets, playing with sand, maybe drawing or coloring in a notebook. In self-contained settings, you're going to want to clearly teach like quote unquote all done routines and coping strategies when they're finished. All right, here's a few things I do not want you to stress over. Do not stress about diving into curriculum too fast. I know 2 weeks seems like a long period of time to not be introducing any academics, but I promise you the curriculum can wait. I don't want you to stress about full-length assessments. Any of those assessments can be put on the back burner until you have your crap organized. Also, Pinterest perfect lessons. No, gosh, please God, no. I want you to focus on predictability, positive reinforcement, teaching them how to be successful in your room and outside of your room. This is especially important for inclusion students, where success might even mean navigating the room independently, advocating for support, or just getting through a full day, right? So here's my final thoughts. I want you to keep it simple and repeat often. The first 10 days are not about checking off boxes. They're about establishing habits. You're not behind if you're not teaching full math lessons yet. You're ahead if your students know how to transition or how to self-regulate and how to use the systems you've put in place. Whether you're in an inclusion setting supporting 10 different teachers or in a self-contained setting with full control, model. And when you think you've taught a routine enough, teach it again. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode, guys. I really hope this gave you real practical clarity on how to kick off your school year, no matter what setting you teach in. And if you're looking for ready-to-use visuals, routines, and low-prep materials for the first 10 days, I really want you to check out my subscription-based Teach TaskBox Inspire membership. You'll find themed resources that are perfect for both self-contained and inclusion environments. That's all for today, guys. Until next time, bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teach TaskBox Inspire. I hope you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead. If you're ready to explore more strategies for empowering your students as independent learners, be sure to dive into my free training at chalkboardsuperhero.com/training. And don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with your special education teacher friends who could use some motivation and inspiration. One more thing before you go. If you're finding this podcast helpful and want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review. Until next time, keep teaching, taskboxing, and inspiring.